your mobile experience, figure out what you can take out of there that's still going to suit your customers' needs, but and your compliance for that matter. But, just figure out how can I rearrange this in a way on mobile that, suits the user, but is not really pay attention to that, your mobile experience. Because I think a lot of the times we always hear, build for mobile first and then desktop. And I think a lot of the times that's thought of, but it's not really considered too much. But a lot of times I find myself even just, I'll be on Facebook or I'll be served an ad somewhere and I'll click on something that kind of interests me that I might want to buy. And I click through and I'm immediately hit with this coupon offer that kind of blocking my view from seeing the details about the product.
Shannon Kelly is a UX designer and a CRO strategist with 15 years of experience working on the web. From working in e-commerce, email advertising, digital marketing agencies, and more, she's gained insights working with companies big and small on how to optimize their lead generation marketing funnels while keeping UX top of mind. This conversation was a crash course in form optimization, which is a topic that is very overlooked. In our conversation, we talked about how to optimize your checkout form to get more conversions, common mistakes people do with their pop-ups, optimizing your forms for mobile versus optimizing your forms for desktop, the difference between a good-looking funnel to a funnel that actually works and converts, usability testing, and much more.
Welcome to the EcomXFactor podcast, where it's all about launching and scaling your business using sales funnels, automations, and smart marketing. And now, please welcome your host, the founder of EcomXFactor, Yaron Bin.
Hi, Shannon. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm very excited for our conversation. Normally, in the last few episodes that I recorded, they were pretty broad conversation. I enjoyed them, but the goal for today is diving deep into form optimization, which really excites me because it's kind of a topic that I think is overlooked. So I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, great. That's awesome. Yeah, my background is mostly forms and lead gen, but I do have some e-com experience. And then just being in user experience, I know what it's like to hear frustrations from users. So it's great for me to be able to be here and give my feedback.
So can you share a bit more about your background?
Yeah, sure. I'm actually started out as like a web designer right out of college. Most of my background is visual web design up until a few years ago where I got into conversion rate optimization. So then I started focusing on how to tweak the designs to be better for optimizations and then testing and all that stuff. So from there, I moved into a more UX role where I'm kind of focused on holistically the whole overarching user journey and just making sure everything is laid out, organized, and working well for the user. But I've been working on the web since, 15, 16 years now. But prior to that, I was building websites when I was 13 years old. And so I've been on the web for a very long time and I've learned a lot along the way. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
How do you define the difference between UX and CRO?
Yeah, a lot of the times I hear CRO referenced a lot in more of the quantitative data, the analytics, the heat mapping, the testing, A/B testing and whatnot. And it's more of that quantitative measurement. You're getting your numbers and your averages and your conversion rates. With UX, I think it's a little bit of that, but also focusing on the qualitative data, interviewing users, asking them questions, finding out why they're doing something, what makes them tick, their reasoning behind things. A lot of the stuff that you can't find out from quantitative data. You can always say, okay, we know where they're from, we know their demographics, we know how they're bouncing off the page, we know how many people visited this page, but we don't know the why behind it. So kind of the research aspect of things that you say, okay, well, why is somebody doing this? And, and what was their experience like getting through this journey? So, and I also like to say that if you improve the UX, generally your conversion rates are going to increase too. So if you're more focused on just getting people through a funnel, that's kind of more CRO. But if you kind of want to look at the overall experience from every direction, that's when you're going to use UX.
And I see that also people are using like CX now. Do you consider it the same as UX?
Yeah, customer experience is kind of like that overarching kind of term for, how they not only they interact with your product, but your brand as well. So it's a little bit of both. And I think, it's a little bit interchangeable, but, it's definitely more of a focused if you have a product or service and you're focused on the UX of that. And then CX would be, how are people interacting with your brand? What's your customer service like? Your PR, all that stuff. So it's kind of all, integrated in that. And UX is just one part of that CX.
This is the way I perceive it as well. Like the customer experience is also like, how does the packaging look like? And did you put a QR code on the label or whatever, like stuff like more a wider, a broader perspective. Cool. Awesome. Thank you for clarifying this. So let's dive into the form sequence, because we kind of said that you will prepare upfront a few tips, tricks, or best practices for optimizing the forms. So can you start out by sharing the first one?
Sure. So since your audience is more focused on e-commerce, I wanted to at least throw out a couple of tips specifically for them. The first one would be those coupon offers that you get when people land on your site, and the modals that pop up that say get 10% off, 20% off, whatever it may be, when you sign up for our emails. My tip is to really think about how those are working on your site and how they're triggered. A lot of times I find myself even just, I'll be on Facebook or I'll be served an ad somewhere, and I'll click on something that kind of interests me that I might want to buy. And I click through and I'm immediately hit with this coupon offer that kind of blocking my view from seeing the details about the product. And I'm like, well, I don't even know who this brand is yet. I don't know if I even want to buy this product yet, because I don't know the price or whatever it may be. So, it's speaking from my own experience and how I just test these pop-ups from coming up on the screen immediately. My tip is to just kind of look at that experience, see if that's really something that is keeping people on the site and they're really taking advantage of it, or if you need to rethink your process of how this works. And there's a couple things that you can do as far as like rethinking the timing. Instead of it immediately popping up when people land on the site, give it 30 seconds, give it a minute. Maybe there's an interaction that somebody has to do first with the page. They have to scroll a certain length or whatever it may be. The different conditions and rules around why it might pop. Think about the placement too. Instead of being right in the middle of the screen, maybe it's something that kind of slides out from the side, or maybe it's just sits at the bottom, or maybe it's a sticky footer instead. Just try these different methods and see what works best for you. Obviously, a lot of people say you can do exit intent. Okay, yeah, you can have this form pop up and say, let's get your email address and send you a coupon when they go to close the browser. That works on desktop. Obviously, we know where their mouse is, but on mobile, we don't have that luxury of knowing where their mouse is. So that's when you have to kind of play around with your timing or the interactions. How far are they scrolling down on the page? Are they scrolling all the way back up and maybe they're going to exit? So try testing those things and figuring out what's working best for whatever platform you're on. But just kind of rethink about that, experience not being right in your face immediately when you land on when a customer lands on your site.
Oh, wow, this is a great tip, and I'm already excited for the next ones, because this is a very important. And for me, based on my own experience, so I'm using like the exit intent pop-up for the desktop, but I saw that when I used exit intent pop-up for mobile, it underperformed in a significant way. And I also tested flyouts and pop-ups, and neither of them like performed well. One thing that I found very important in mobile that people overlook in the pop-ups, that the close button is sometimes very small. The X is very small. So throwing in a button for closing the pop-up, I find it important. And this distinction between the pop-up for desktop and the mobile, which you mentioned, is highly, highly important. You should compare them and create the pop-up for each placement differently and approach them differently.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
Cool. And do you have any best practices? Obviously, it depends on the product and the market and whatever, but do you have any trends or best practices? Like, let's say, okay, these days, flyouts, generally speaking, outperform pop-ups, for example?
Not really any like benchmark numbers or anything like that. I think it's just a matter of just making sure you're testing these different things. Maybe try the sticky, banner at the top or bottom of the page. Maybe it's a fly out from the corner. Maybe it's a little bottom corner offer. Maybe it is the pop-up, but you're really figuring out the timing and whatnot. look at your average time on page, and kind of calculate your pop-ups based on that too. Because if you're saying, okay, well, average people are staying on there 30 to 35 seconds, let's try popping this at 30 seconds or 25 seconds instead of like immediately when they get there. So, it's just looking at your data and kind of figuring out what's going to be less intrusive, but still going to get you the input that you need. You need those email leads. And so you want to remarket and retarget those people in different ways. So it's like, just figure out the best way that's not intrusive and bothering people. Because if you're looking at, if people are going to your site and you're seeing a lot of bounce rates or people are leaving immediately or whatever, it's probably due to what might be happening to them immediately when they land on the site. So
yeah, and another thing that is important in mobile, so different softwares have different mechanism of throwing the exit intent. So this is also important. So if you're using the exit intent on mobile, so you need to figure the software, when does it throw the pop-up? Just wanted to add this. So great. Yeah. Can we move on to the next one?
Yeah, sure. I was actually to kind of like segue into mobile experience is really pay attention to that, your mobile experience. Because, I think a lot of the times we always hear, build for mobile first and then desktop. And I think a lot of the times that's thought of, but it's not really considered too much. But, go through the process of going through your own site through the mobile experience in multiple browsers and multiple ways and test it as much as you can with real life users. If you can test and do some UX qualitative research. Lately, I've been finding when I go to e-commerce stores, there's we have that standard GDPR pop-up that we need to have on the site, that cookie there. We need to, we'll have a chat box that says, can we help you? There might be the coupon offer. There might be another sticky offer for, a discount code or something like that. There might be an accessibility tab. There might be all these things on the screen that you consider in desktop that are all spread out on the screen. But when you get on the mobile experience, they're all overlaying each other. You can't close and click one. And, all you have is this tiny, tiny little window of like a preview of your product behind all these things. So really look at your mobile experience and figure out what you can take out of there that's still going to suit your customers' needs, but and your compliance for that matter. But just figure out how can I rearrange this in a way on mobile that suits the user, but is not by any means annoying and cluttering the screen. I think we kind of don't think about all these things when we're hitting our users with all these offers and coupons and tabs and whatnot. So it's reduce where you can and let people take advantage of be in control of their experience. If they want to chat with somebody, make your chat link somewhere prominent on the page, but maybe it's in the header or the navigation somewhere, but maybe it's not overlaying and popping up automatically on mobile so that they can't see the products that you have.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it happens so often that you enter a website on mobile and you see the Facebook Messenger and the chat and everything is overlaying each other, layers and layers. And this is disgusting in a way, and it's also obviously harming the conversion.
Right, and I think it's like like I said before, with the form popping up like that, you gotta obviously have to test your placement and how this works and whatnot. I mean, I literally a site I like to shop at. It's a local clothing store, but they have a website that I shop at, and it's the same experience. There's the pop up and there's something that scrolls down and then shows you a coupon offer, and then it's got another thing at the bottom that talks about, oh, this person recently bought this, and then this person bought this, and so it's showing you all these things, and it's like, well, on my screen it's just cluttered and annoying, and I just want to see the products that I clicked through to see. So considering disabling where you can on mobile.
For sure. And you already talked a lot about the qualitative tests. Yes. Am I pronouncing it correctly? Yeah. So, I mean, do you use like Hotjar or Lucky Orange watch the screen recording, or you do prefer usability test, or you do both?
Yep. Yeah. Using the usability test is generally a great way to see, where the potential frustrations are, especially for people that may not be your actual user, but fall in that demographic of who your user is. If you can do usability testing, there's plenty of platforms out there to do that. But even unmoderated, so you don't have to be working with them face to face or even live. You can set up a test that tells them to complete a task, and to express how they feel aloud and what they think about the site or the experience. That's the best way to kind of get that qualitative type of data where you can see where people are frustrated and why. So pair that with your quantitative data, though. Do your heat mapping, your video recordings, eye tracking, whatever you have. Pair that data and don't just rely on one over the other. Make sure that you're using all the information that you can to really optimize the experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did like 2 weeks ago usability test. It was like without any software, just I got people from Upwork, I sent them the link, we opened the Zoom, and I asked them to share screen, and I recorded the session, and they spoke. And I was kind of shocked because like things that I thought made sense or that I didn't even notice, and I consider myself someone who knows what he's doing in a way, but it was shocking to see how many conversion crimes I did over there. So doing a usability test is very powerful.
Yep.
Awesome. So the third one, next tip.
So this one's kind of probably not too related to e-commerce, but if you have a form that requires a date of birth, please stop using those calendar drop downs. The ones where it shows like the actual month and you have to like select the date and then go back through and scroll through and select the year you were born. If somebody's, older on your site, they're obviously going to be scrolling a very long time to find the date or clicking through those calendars to get to their age. The best thing for this is to either have, formatted text fields that kind of automatically fill out, not automatically fill out, but like, that kind of show you the format that you need to put the date in, or, going back to the old school drop downs. Your month is January, your birthday is the 25th, and the year you were born is, this year. You can type that in manually. There's also options too, as far as, you can have those fields kind of autofill for you as you start typing, and then, making it a little bit easier of experience for the user, so they don't have to go through and scroll, especially when it comes to on mobile. That experience is terrible on mobile, and just having to click back through, months and months and months and years of date selections. This can also pertain to like when you have to fill out your date or your state or your province or wherever you live. The same thing, you can kind of, when you start typing, that could possibly do that, auto generate and auto fill it out, where you might live. If you can do that, that's just so much better to, they could start typing where they live, and it would give them a list of options. They can click that instead. Anything you can do to reduce the frustration and the time it's going to take to fill out that form is just best.
Yeah, and I think it's also very crucial, especially for the checkout, because when customers, for me, I saw in one of the recordings, so customers were from the UK, and what I did, because the majority of the customers in one of my stores are from the UK and from the United States, so I show it as the first options. But I saw that customers in mobiles, they looked for UK based on the alphabet. So they scrolled down until they find the U, and they saw many countries, but they didn't find the United Kingdom, because the United Kingdom was at the top of the list because I promoted it. And then customers just left because they couldn't find United Kingdom. So optimizing the checkout is very important. And I mean, in Shopify, it's harder, I think. It depends on which platform you're using, but optimizing this kind of stuff, it's where the money is, in the checkout. So you must have reduce any friction and make the checkout form so flawless.
Yeah, and that's a great example of what should be tested. Okay, well, if people are kind of used to scrolling, they might want to scroll. But if you give them maybe something that you can start typing, and then it would give them some options, then then maybe that's better. Or maybe, like you said, maybe the top options are your most, users are from a certain location. Those are at the top. So just always testing those options too. I mean, there's no one right or wrong way. Obviously you have to do what's best for your users. But, when you're thinking about that experience, and it's, how long is this form taking to fill out? Is it difficult? Do you not have your required form, fields labeled and stuff like that? So just making sure, like, how quickly can somebody get through this? So,
and one would be surprised of how many frictions could happen during the checkout. I mean, you'd be shocked that some forms, when someone puts in the zip code, they must have a space because in that specific country, they have to use a space. On some forms, if you don't have, if people don't find where to write the flat down, like the address to field, they don't know what to do. So this can go wrong, even though it's so simple, it can go wrong. So you really should invest time into this. And another thing that, it kind of complements what you said, make it as easy as possible. So sometimes you can send in the UTMs the billing country upfront based on the user location, for example, or based on the funnel. So sending the UTMs as pre-filled data also makes a lot of sense in creating better forms.
Yeah, I mean, anything that you can use to autofill the process is best. If they're clicking through from email, they should automatically have their email address in the email field when they're going to fill it out, type of thing. So, just making that process easier. And then also, just to piggyback on that, don't put that many restrictions on the fields that you have in your form. Don't say that they have to have a minimum of 3 characters in that field. I have some Asian friends who have their last name is 2 letters and they get into a form or a process and the field's like, oh, you have to put more than 3 characters. And it's like, well, my last name is NG or whatever. So let's consider all of our audience, who's coming from where and who may be, who might be our target customer. And let's not put restrictions on those fields. And like you said, sometimes the zip code or the area code or whatever has to have a space in between. Give examples too with the fields, like showing an example of how it should be formatted or.
Quick favor, guys. If you enjoy these shows and have been a listener for quite some time now, we would really appreciate it if you could take the time to give us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever your preferred podcast app may be. Having lots of ratings and audience feedback makes our show become more visible across multiple platforms. And it also supports our mission of helping as many people as possible to become better marketers and better entrepreneurs. So if you're not driving and it wouldn't be dangerous, pause this thing right now and give us an honest review over your podcast app. And we will love you even more than we already do. Thank you for taking the time, and I hope you enjoyed the show.
And consider that also for your different locations. Sometimes in some countries, the day is before the month and then the year and a date. Where in the United States, we do month, day, and year. So consider that and how that comes through into your system. But obviously think about that when you're creating these systems and these processes that you're considering everybody worldwide. You don't want to just limit it to just where you live. So
yeah, and it reminds me, like a friend of mine told me that they optimized the form by customers didn't know what does the CVV mean, so they just had whenever someone was on the desktop, when they were hovering over this field, so they had a small pop-up showing like the back of the credit card, for example, and this gave them a nice lift in conversion in desktop. So don't take anything for granted. You should simplify everything.
Yeah, and give hints and examples of how it should be filled out. If the worst case scenario, I mean, it's in UX. They say, if you have to explain how something works, it's not it's not done right. But at the same time, you've got to consider your different audiences and who's familiar with technology, who may not be. So giving an example of how it should be filled out or what you're asking for is really important, and making sure that it clearly states what should be in that field. I think a lot of the time, like I go through forms and I see, well, they want something that's like, I don't know, some kind of intrusive type of field, and it's like, well, what do you mean by that? Like, what I don't know what I'm supposed to put here. So if you can do those little eye icons and explain it more, or just label your field better, that's just more descriptive of what you're looking for. For the average person, like sometimes we get into this headspace where we're focused on the internal wording that we use to talk about our business, and, somebody who might land on your site might not really understand what you do. So making sure that those fields are really catered to the people who are maybe not familiar.
Mm-hmm. And what about regarding this topic of like simplifying and giving instructions? What is your opinion about in the microcopy, for example? Let's say we have a button. So would you write down, click here to move to the next step? Or, what is your opinion of using like instructions in the microcopy? Is it too much? Or, is it like in a way thinking that your customers are way too stupid? Or
well, I would say obviously don't patronize them, I guess in the sense of like, oh, well, this is what we're doing when we're walking you through, but just giving like a very high level, maybe a short description of what you're looking for. One of my tips actually was going to be about walking through a process, giving them a step-by-step. If your form's too long, say if you have a long application process or a long checkout process, making sure it is step-by-step and letting them know you're on step one. Please fill out your billing information.
Yeah.
To the next step. Okay. Step two, this is shipping information. Just making sure you're labeling that stuff so they know what they're filling out at that specific time. And just kind of, you don't have to like hold their hand that much, but at the same time, you might have to just remind them where they're at in their process. Especially if it's like an application site. I've been on sites, and this is years ago, but I've been on sites for job applications, and you have to like upload your resume, and then you have to refill out everything that's in your resume in the job application. And it's one long page of just form fields. And it's like, all right, let's try to break this up into step-by-step and let people know where they're at in the process. Okay, we need your basic information. Great. Now we need your job history. Next. Now we need your education. Next, and then any other demographics that they need. So labeling it in a sense of like where they're going to next isn't a bad idea, but it should just be simple and clear where they're going.
Yeah, and it reminds me, like a few days ago, we created a survey for our customers, and I wanted to leave like a place for them to write text. Write like an open answer. Mm-hmm. But we saw that in the mobile, whenever the keyboard, they were able to see the keyboard. This was hiding the next button of the form, because it was a conversational form. It wasn't a scrolling form. So a conversational form is you see the question, you answer, and then you can move to the next question.
Right.
And me and my wife, we couldn't find the place that in order to minimize the keyboard and move to the next question. Mm-hmm. So we decided instead because we thought if we couldn't figure this out, it's probably like a glitch. So we should maybe change the form. So we just changed the form instead of having like open questions. So we thought about different answers, and we added them in like checkbox answers, and we removed the other option. Mm-hmm. We just gave more options, because like the open answer didn't make sense, because people would bounce because they wouldn't be able to move on. So right. This is, this is important. Sometimes we want to get as much data as possible, so we leave like open answers, but this creates a lot of frustration normally with the users.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point too, as far as like if you're doing some kind of survey type of answer, or some kind of questionnaire, give as many answers as you can without it being too overloading for people. But maybe instead of giving them an open-ended answer like every question, leave a spot at the end just for them to give their final feedback, and don't make it required. Obviously, but give them the option to say where they may be experiencing frustrations, or maybe where they can give you a little bit more detail about something. And just allowing that last question to be the open-ended answer, and obviously making sure the form and the process works too. You couldn't figure out where the button was. Probably users didn't do that either. So, let's making sure that's obvious where they're supposed to go next, and how we're supposed to get through this form. So.
And one thing that is important about this, so if you leave the open question to the last thing, so make sure that the software that you're using, it records the questions no matter if the customer submitted the whole form. Because let's say he answered everything and then he said, "Oh, I'm not going to answer this question," and then he leaves. And if let's say you're using Typeform, and if Typeform doesn't save unanswered forms that were not submitted, so it kind of sucks. So make sure that the service that you're using records any answers, even if people didn't complete the form.
Yeah, that's a great tip, because I think a lot of the times, I find myself getting emails to fill out surveys and whatnot, and it says like, oh, it's going to be 5 to 10 minutes to fill out the survey. Oh, okay. And then I get through it and I'm like, well, I really have to think about these answers and type these things out. About halfway through, I'm like, well, it's a half an hour already and I got to get back to work, so, that's part of the user experience, is saying, okay, you're claiming it's 5 to 10 minutes, but it's more like 20 to 25 minutes or whatever it may be. So recording the, where the person got through the last step that they got through, making sure that's still submitted to you. I know that there's different survey platforms out there that allow you to do, you can record how many people actually finished the survey versus not. And then the data that you got from those original answers that were answered. So yes, that's a great tip. And just make sure if you are putting customer surveys out there that they are the length that you claim that they are.
Sure. Yes. And also the another upside of not getting the open answers, it's easier to analyze. If you for me now, I analyze the answers. So I just had the people that answered the checkbox. So it's easier for me to do a thorough analysis instead of just starting to read a lot of long answers.
Right. Yeah. When you have so many open-ended answers like that, you have to kind of do a card sort and figure out where the trends and the commonalities are there. So yeah, you have to, the more open-ended answers you have, great, because you are getting more in-depth detail about something, but at the same time, it's definitely more analysis that you have to do, which isn't bad. I mean, I love data and I'm a data nerd, but it depends on how much time you have to put towards a project or whatever it may be. So yeah, it's definitely just
something to be considered.
Yeah, something to consider and think about when you're doing any kind of open-ended answers. So yeah.
Awesome, cool. So we dove deep into. Was this the first or the third or the fourth point?
That was the fourth point.
The fourth,
I believe.
Okay, cool. Yeah, okay.
Because I ended up switching my order around, but I will say that my next tip has to do more with design than it does with the actual forms, but making sure that your lead gen or any kind of opt-in form of some sort, the fields actually look like fields. I've worked at different agencies and I've had different marketing teams and stuff like that send me designs that they want to use to test and whatnot. And one of the clients that we had, they send over this design that it was just basically an opt-in or some kind of lead gen form, and the fields were just the name, but then there was a line underneath, and then you're kind of questioned with well, where am I typing? Where am I clicking to, engage this form? And I said, this is kind of confusing for me as somebody who is a designer and who's used to using technology. Have you thought about using an actual box for the field to type in? And they're like, oh, we don't want to do that. And so we ran the design that they requested, and with just the line underneath. And oh, why aren't we getting conversions? Isn't anybody filling out the form? I said, okay. I tried to say, hey, maybe we should test this field, and they're like, okay, do whatever you think is best. Let's test it against what we have. And so literally that A/B test was the field with an outline versus no outline, and all of a sudden they started getting conversions on the field that was actually outlined and showed people where they're supposed to click, and actually just make it obvious that your fields are fields. I know you get into this this mindset of oh, it's got to be slick design, it's got to be modern and stuff like that. Average people don't care about design. Average people don't care about, aesthetics and stuff like that. They just want to make sure that they can get what they want and they're going to get through the process. And if you want something from them, like their email, or you want them to opt into something, or it's a lead gen form, you got to make it easier for them, and just make it obvious that they're filling out a field.
And this is such an important point. I mean, whenever I speak with designers, I feel that some of them, they overemphasize slickness and aesthetics. So what is your take on this? Because for me, I kind of feel that designers love to design, and many times they need to get work, and they need to give like a reason for hiring them, and seem important in a way. But for me, I don't think, based on my experience, I never saw that the pages that were designed better outperform the pages that were simpler to use. What is your experience in this regards?
Absolutely, that's same experience. I have tested pages that have been beautifully designed, and they just visually, they just look appealing, and you're kind of in awe of things, and they just don't convert. And so, this is the case with multiple things. I think when it comes down to designers, there's still a lot of different mindsets between designers. You still have your UI visual designers, and then you have UX designers, which are thinking about things, making it simple and easy to go through, and it's more about the process versus the aesthetics of it. I think it's one of those things you just have to remind designers that, yes, you're good at what you do. We see that your visual artwork is amazing, but design is not art. Art is art, and design is meant to be a solution to something, a process. So just reminding them gently that, visually this looks great, but we need this to be simpler, or, needs to stand out more, or however, whatever the process is that you're working with, just making sure that things are clear and simple. Like I said, we get in this headspace that we have to design these amazing experiences, and most people don't even look at the design as the design. They just want the product or the service or whatever you're offering. Just make it simple for them. I've done so many A/B tests like that, and I'll tell you, keeping things simple and clean in a way that it's designed well, where there's like alignment and things like that. Your text is all aligned, or you don't have wonky things on your page that are different widths and whatnot. Obviously you want to keep things aligned and very, very visually easy to scan through. But it doesn't have to be the next Van Gogh, of the web. It doesn't have to be something amazing. It doesn't have to be this amazing artwork. It's a design for a reason. So I say, if you want work, and you want to work in the UX space or something where you're dealing with a lot of UI, you're going to have to show in your portfolio that whatever you did helped and increased. It's not just about the visual design anymore. So
yeah, this is so important, and I love the saying, design is not art. It has a purpose. It's important to understand that it has a purpose. And I think that many people, especially like e-commerce owners, when they're just starting out, so sometimes they hire designers that are in love with, that are too much of an artist, because it's easy when you're just beginning, don't have a lot of experience, to see a nice design, a beautiful design, and be attracted to the design and hire the designer. But what you should be really interested is, as you said, the lift in the conversions. Do these designers, can they create a lift in the conversions? It's not about the art. And this is important. What is the sixth?
Oh, okay. Well, it was like piggybacking on the one I said earlier about the step process and walking them through. Anything that you can do to reduce the number of fields in any of your forms is best. If you're requiring an email for them to get your coupon code, just make it an email field. Don't make it like their name, if it's a lead gen form, get the minimum amount of information that you need from them, name, email, title, or business, whatever that may be. If you're working with B2B, phone as optional, and then maybe one more field that you may need to qualify them as a lead. Make it simple, just whatever you can do, and make sure that your fields are actually labeled in the back end and in the development, that if they have an autofill set up in their browser or in something like LastPass or whatever, if it's automatically going to fill in their information, just make sure your fields are named properly too, so that picks up on that and auto fills out the fields. I'm one of those people that just any way I can reduce the amount of time it takes to fill out something, I have that, autofill option, and usually for the most part, those fields are autofill correctly, but sometimes you have to go back and edit those too. But just making sure that it's a reduced process, the least amount of fields as possible, but then also that the back end, those fields are labeled properly so that the autofill can step in when people want it to.
Great. This is also a great tip, and I want also to connect this to what you said before. So, if you're asking for anything, you like you said, and I love that tip, is you should tell them why you're asking for this. So, for example, in an e-commerce store, when you're asking for a phone, so you can write like a small note. This will ensure proper delivery, or just in case that the courier can't contact you. So give them an explanation why. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I think that's such a valid point, because I think a lot of times I think, well, why do they need this? Why do they need that? Give them just a little tiny text underneath that can explain, even something that they can, somebody can see, or maybe it pops up bigger and explain why you're asking for this. It's crucial and it's important. I think a lot of the times, when you don't put why you're asking for things, people get deterred from it and say, well, I don't want to do this after all, or, so you're left with abandoned carts and stuff like that. So yeah, it's super important to get the reasoning behind those fields. And if it's not required, obviously make sure that they know it's not required. Indicating what we definitely need from you, and then, oh, this would be nice to have, but we don't need your phone number. We can follow up via email. Yeah. There's also the option of how you prefer to be contacted too. I always think that option is kind of nice too. If you're going to require me to put my email in, but I still want the option of how I want you to contact me, make sure you're following through on that. Number one, if they check just email only, just make sure you're only contacting them via email. But if they say call me, give them the option, and make sure it's a checkbox, not necessarily a bullet check or whatever, where you can check both or none or whatever. So giving them the option to do that too, because I think it's important to put it in the control of the user, your customers and stuff like that. Put it in their hands to say, this is how I prefer to be contacted, and I don't want to be bugged any other way.
Awesome. Wow, Shannon, we covered so much interesting topics in regards to form. I think it's like was like a crash course in creating great forms.
Oh, thank you.
But also advanced topics. Is there anything that we forgot to cover, or anything that you would like to add about forms, or any trends that you're seeing lately that have really changed, or anything like this?
I mean, my advice always is test. I mean, don't ever stop testing either. You think you have something optimized properly and is working well, just keep testing and playing around with your call to actions on your forms. Like I said, the step processes in your forms, just making sure that everything is working properly too. That's another thing, QA it. And but yeah, it's always best to just test and always take what I say with a grain of salt too. My advice is just advice from what I've seen over the years of working in the industry, but like I said, what may work for one person doesn't work for another. So somebody might come at you and say, oh, this is the way to do it, this is the holy grail of this process, and it might not work for your customer. So and it might not work for you, because obviously you're in the business of making money. So so just always test when possible, A/B test, split test, however you have to do it. And if you can test some usability tests as well, to get some of that qualitative data as well, that's important too. So
I agree. I totally agree. One last question that came to mind while you were talking. Did you play around with video quizzes or video forms, like including video in the form or in the quiz, stuff like that, or not really?
Not really a whole lot. I think, that kind of goes back to letting the user know how much time it's going to take to watch the video or go through the video. I think a lot of the times I think about that type of process for like training and things like that. Internal training, and HR might want you to watch a video and then answer the questions afterwards, or some kind of certification process. I think it's not a bad idea to have them to switch up the content within your form, especially if it's going to be like a long process. Like I said, just keep testing. Some people would rather listen to a video or watch a video versus reading a block of text. So, or, even just seeing an image, or maybe the visual of something being done step by step versus having to read it step by step or see it step by step in just an image. It might work better for you. So that's another example of, making sure you're testing that process.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shannon. Where can people connect with you? Are you active on any social media platforms?
I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I post a lot of stuff about UX, CRO. I share a lot of stuff about better copywriting from other people who are not me. I'm not a great copywriter, but I share a lot of helpful information and events and things like that. So you can find me on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun and very insightful. Appreciate your time, and you will keep in touch.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Bye-bye. Take care. Hi guys, this is Yaron again. Just a few more things before you take off. Number one, if you want to learn more about e-commerce and marketing, make sure you check out our YouTube channel, which is called EcomXFactor Official. Number two, check out our Facebook group, which is called EcomXFactor Marketing and E-commerce Mastermind. This is a great place to ask questions and connect with other business owners. And last but not least, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to share it with your friends and colleagues, plus leave a review at your favorite podcast app.